Bitcoin just closed its first ever daily and weekly candle above $100,000. So why aren't we mooning? And what is going on with altcoins? In today's video, we'll be going over exactly what is happening with Bitcoin and the rest of the crypto market, as well as highlighting a likely path into the new year. Let's jump right into it. First things first, we made history. Bitcoin closed above $100,000 on the daily and the weekly time frame. This is extremely bullish for the entire asset class, and it should fuel Bitcoin's next move. Okay, so we closed above 100K, but as we can see here, Bitcoin is now below $98,000. Guys, did you really think it was going to be that easy? We close above 100K and then we just go straight up? If you've been in crypto, you understand how these things work. There's always going to be a little more resistance around these levels, and this is nothing more than a healthy correction. We can see here as an example that if we were to close the week at $98,000, it wouldn't be bearish because it would be our second highest weekly close ever. You just need to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. Now, if we zoom in a little bit, what we can see here is, as discussed in a previous video, Bitcoin had a little bit of uncertainty as there were equal wicks to both sides of this candle. But we ended up moving higher. And now this is the second part of that move, where we are likely to move a little bit lower. So for me, the next immediate level of support would be around the $96,500 mark. So while these are very minor moves for Bitcoin, up 5%, down 4%, down 3%, the altcoin market is still struggling a little bit. And the reason being is because there's still a little bit of uncertainty with Bitcoin not consolidating quite yet. I mentioned that we would really want to see Bitcoin consolidating above $100,000 for altcoins to really run. Now, we had the daily and weekly closes above that level, but we're clearly not consolidating above there yet, as we can see, revisiting down below $98,000. Also, as we're into the first week of the month, we know what has been happening with Bitcoin, and I'll remind you. In my previous video, I spoke about this chart, which basically shows at the beginning of every single month since July this year, Bitcoin has had small corrections. We can see here that in July, we decreased only to move higher. Same thing in August, same thing in September, same thing in October, same thing in November. We were slightly trending higher until we finally had that explosive move from November into December. And now we are just wrapping up the first week of December, not quite in the second half of the month. And so it does make sense to me that Bitcoin is still seeing a little bit of hesitation at the beginning of the month, as we've been seeing multiple times before. Now, to me, I always say this, but it's very important to zoom out. We got the daily close, we got the weekly close, things are looking good. But in the meantime, we can see that altcoins outside of the top 10 have been struggling a little bit. And it's only really to be expected, because if we zoom out on this chart, we can see that in the previous bull market, right around the top, these are where altcoins essentially topped out. Now, in my opinion, the bull market still has a long way to go. And of course, there's going to be a little bit of resistance around these levels. The positive sign here is that altcoins outside of the top 10 closed above this key level, meaning that we will likely consolidate before going on and moving higher. Remember, the all-time high for others is right below $500 billion at 492. So once we break this level, it is clear skies ahead for altcoins. But until then, Bitcoin needs to decide its path, because as I always say, it leads the rest of the market. Now guys, this is not the time to be panicking. If you have cash on the side, this is a perfect opportunity to look at the select few altcoins that are still holding up well when Bitcoin is struggling to consolidate. These are the ones that will likely perform even better once Bitcoin consolidates above the 100K level. Now, the funny thing here is that when Bitcoin was consolidating around $97,000 to $99,000, altcoins were picking up, and hence we were seeing that Bitcoin dominance over here started crashing down. This was around the time that Bitcoin was around $97,000 to $99,000. And so that period allowed altcoins to catch up and start pumping. But as soon as we started flirting with the 100K level, that is when altcoins took a back seat. And I warned you about this. Liquidity from the altcoin market tends to go into Bitcoin as it tries to surpass these next milestones, 100K being one of the biggest possible milestones for Bitcoin. And Bitcoin not quite consolidating above that milestone means that altcoins will suffer. While Bitcoin is consolidating and alts are struggling a little bit, this is the perfect opportunity to start picking up the altcoins that you've been eyeing out. And if you're looking for one of the best ways to do so, I would highly recommend signing up to Weeks. Weeks is an excellent crypto exchange, and if you sign up with my link, you can earn up to $20,000 in bonuses. It's the first link in my description. Okay, so it's very clear that altcoins are still waiting for Bitcoin to confirm its next move. And the best way that I can exemplify this for you is by showing you this. Altcoins waiting to see what Bitcoin will do next. Bitcoin ahead of the pack, as always, and all the thousands of altcoins just sitting behind it, waiting. This is exactly what's going on with the market. And as soon as Bitcoin passes that 100K level and consolidates above there, altcoins will run. But I do have to remind you again, if Bitcoin's consolidation period above $100,000 is short-lived and it just explodes higher, once again, you have to understand that altcoins will be underperforming Bitcoin until it properly consolidates. Now, all this is happening while we have some extremely interesting news going on in the crypto space. One of them being the fact that the US Treasury is now comparing Bitcoin to digital gold. And I quote, "The primary use case for Bitcoin seems to be a store of value, aka digital gold." Now, if the US Treasury is saying this, imagine how much higher we can go in the long term. The potential is infinite. Oh, and in case you didn't think there was enough big players in the space, Microsoft shareholders are set to decide on the firm's Bitcoin investment proposal this Tuesday, December 10th. So tomorrow should be an exciting day, and we'll get to find out, hopefully, whether or not Microsoft will be one of the many companies to start investing in Bitcoin. Now, rumors have it that it's not just Microsoft either. Amazon shareholder, the National Center for Public Policy Research, submits a proposal for Amazon to adopt Bitcoin as a treasury reserve asset. And let me just read out a little part of this to you. Though Bitcoin is currently a volatile asset, as Amazon stock has been at times throughout its history, corporations have a responsibility to maximize shareholder value over the long term as well as the short term. Diversifying the balance sheet by including some Bitcoin solves this problem without taking on too much volatility. At minimum, Amazon should evaluate the benefits of holding some, even just 5% of its assets in Bitcoin. This is extremely bullish for the crypto space. I remember it was around the peak of the previous bull market when all of the media started talking about Bitcoin that they started to say that you should have at least 1% of your net worth into Bitcoin. Now we're not just seeing companies hold 1%, but much, much more. Obviously, MicroStrategy is a huge outlier here, but more and more companies are adopting Bitcoin as their reserve asset. And the suggestion of 5% for Amazon is huge. We cannot downplay that. If they move forward with this, it would bring even more awareness to the crypto industry. Okay, so Bitcoin is still deciding where it wants to go despite having a very bullish close to the week. Altcoins are struggling a little bit as expected, and so if this small correction for Bitcoin continues further, it could provide an excellent opportunity to start accumulating some more high conviction altcoins. Now, there is a minor sign on my radar that tells me we could correct a little bit further, and that is the fact that long-term Bitcoin holders have sold 827,000 Bitcoins in the last 30 days. This is typically bearish when long-term Bitcoin holders start selling. As we can see on this chart here, this is the price of Bitcoin, this purple line, and in the red is when they're selling, and in the green is when there's buying. Now, we can see here that the last time that this happened in 2021, January, and there was a huge peak of sells, Bitcoin continued on a little bit higher before having a big correction. Then we saw this around the March peak at around $74,000, which Bitcoin went ahead and then consolidated for a few months. Then we have today. And so we can see that this long-term selling volume really picked up. Now, this doesn't mean that Bitcoin will just have a drastic correction. It could actually move a little bit higher, but it does suggest that in the shorter term, we can see a correction for Bitcoin. Now, whether that's next week, next month, we're not sure, but we are sure that Bitcoin can't just move up in a straight line. So as I mentioned in some previous videos, you should always have a cash position ready to buy up these dips, not just on Bitcoin, but on select altcoins. And let's wrap this video up by talking about Bitcoin dominance a little bit further. So we can see here that we broke out of this wedge, and I was suggesting that we would have a mini altcoin season. But into the end of the year, Bitcoin historically has stronger moves than the altcoin market. And this is why I've always been saying that altcoins will likely pick up a lot into 2025. And it's also why the altcoin picks on my channel will be held well into 2025 to hopefully make some great gains, because that is when the altcoins really start to perform. Now, it wouldn't surprise me if Bitcoin dominance were to pop up a little bit and test this previous breakdown point to come further down into 2025. Bitcoin and Bitcoin dominance both have a way to tease us when it comes to altcoin season. I know everyone's always super excited for altcoins, but we just need to be patient and have solid positions ready for when the altcoin season truly starts. And I say truly because this, again, is a mini altcoin season. The real altcoin season should start when the money printing starts. And to show you this one more time, some of you that have already been watching my channel know exactly what chart I'm going to pull up. Yes, the Ethereum Bitcoin chart. I always say that Ethereum really leads the altcoin market. And the last time that Ethereum sustainably pumped on its Bitcoin pair, and of course on its USD pair, was when we went from quantitative tightening to quantitative easing. Quantitative tightening basically means that the government is restricting the economy, not printing much money. Quantitative easing, they start turning on those money printers very aggressively. And we can see exactly what happened with Ethereum on its Bitcoin pair when that happens. Now, this would fuel the altcoin market. Right now, this mini altcoin season is without any kind of money printing. And so we do actually need that to have a proper, explosive altcoin season. But the good news is that I am expecting this to happen. There's a Fed meeting on December 18th, which could be the time where they turn on the money printer. And if it's not at that time, then the next meeting would be into January. In my opinion, this is likely to happen within the next few months and should fuel a magnificent altcoin rally. But right now, with Bitcoin having a little bit of uncertainty and not quite consolidating yet, altcoins are still struggling. But I believe that we are moving into one of the next big phases for crypto, and that is a Bitcoin consolidating above $100,000, the money printer turning on, and the altcoin season truly starting. The current mini altcoin season that we have now is an altcoin season for ants. I'm expecting much, much more. Now I'll end this video with some Alex Becker. Based on the timeline's reaction to this dip, many of you are not cut out to make it in a bull market. Bulls are not rainbows and kittens. They are terrifying dips that wipe out all your gains in 5 minutes and take balls of steel to hold through. This is nothing compared to what's coming. You need to be prepared for dips because there will certainly be a lot of them in this bull market. If you enjoyed the content, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.